Welcome to the Local Insider Podcast, a show about everyday people who make a big difference.
Welcome to Benhamo Mexican Restaurant, your home away from home in the heart of Logan County. We're more than just a place to dine, we're a part of your family, and you're a part of ours. For over 2 decades, Benhamo has been your trusted destination for celebrations, where you mark success and share cherished moments with friends and loved ones. Our commitment to Logan County runs deep, reflected in every dish we serve, crafted with love, tradition, and the flavors that bring us together. Benhamo Mexican Restaurant, where every bite is a taste of tradition. Join us tonight and become a part of our family. Benhamo Mexican Restaurant. Savor the heritage since 2003.
Ryan Harmon, welcome to the show.
Ryan, thanks for having me, brother. Glad to be here. We've been threatening this for almost a year now.
Yeah, almost a year. I really appreciate you making the trip to do this ahead of the concert.
Man, you got it. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah. So I mainly wanted to get you in the chair to. I know you're going to be an inspiration to a lot of my viewers. A lot of my viewers are, a little younger. Some of them not so much, but a lot of them are younger because the guests I have on are people who have a different skill set, I should say. They will, they're more determined. They have goals. It's not just somebody that's inherited a bunch of money. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
I definitely know.
And,
I know all about that.
Yeah. So I wanted to have you on so that way my fans will know basically what your story is, what it takes to set out and be a music man and to do what you love to do and perform and I will say of all the shows I've been to, I've been not to I wasn't like a deadhead or anything. I didn't follow around, didn't go to Bonnaroo or anything like that.
Right.
But of all the shows that I've been to, as far as a performer, you take the cake, man.
Man, thank you.
And really what makes a difference is your connection with the audience. I know I introduced you and I had butterflies when I was doing that. And you got up there and you took a dead audience because I got up there and I said, "Good evening, everybody," and they were just like, "Wow!" And then you took them, and you just injected all this life into them, and they just erupted into, and you just took your stage presence is amazing. I'd never seen that before,
I appreciate that, man. Well, but you know what? And I'm not just saying this, but it's up to the audience as to if that happens or not. I've learned that so much, and believe me, I have played some rooms where it doesn't matter what you do. You're playing in front of a bunch of duds. They don't care. But meanwhile, they expect you to act like you're at Madison Square Garden, and they're giving you nothing.
They're on their phones and they're...
Oh, thank you. When you said you wanted to get me in the chair, I'm like, finally. And I don't even have to pay for it. This is great. Oh man, but man, that happens, and I'll say that a lot of it's my generation because that's the way it's been, and I'm just not wired that way. It's kind of a weird thing to deal with, but man, out here at Broadway Memorial Park last year was a fantastic audience, and I'm hoping that we get the same bunch to come out here this year, man, because it really was. When you get an audience that is, and it's why I love doing the small town concert series kind of thing, man. We just did one in kind of my backyard of Clarksville recently, and what I love about it is when you get the right crowd there, they'll get rambunctious on the fun, upbeat songs, and then when you play something that's really subdued and lyrical, they'll listen. And it doesn't get any better than that. But yeah, there's certainly when it's a crowd that just won't give you anything, it don't matter what you do, man. So you can't beat yourself up over that too much. Just gotta do the best you can with it and hope it's better the next time, I guess.
Right. So that's one of the points that I find in a lot of successful people, such as yourself, is you're going to have the hiccups and the bad crowds, and it's important not to take that personally and let it ruin your whole drive, and know that the next one's going to be better.
It is important not to take it personally, but man, I'm not going to lie to you. This is, and I'm just going to be totally transparent. This has been the most difficult year I've ever had doing this, because there's so much more of that, and I don't know what the difference is. Is that as we're doing this right now, the Arkansas Country Music Awards this week.
I've seen that.
Ran into a bunch of friends of mine that, at this point, because we're all playing different places, we don't get to see each other very much. This is one of the only places where we know we're all going to be in the same place. And it seemed like just about everybody has had that going on. I've had some vocal struggles this year, the last few months, something I've never had happen before, where I'm just, it's like I've got a governor on me almost, where, I just can't
get the range that you had.
Well, it's not even the range. Like, I can, from my head voice, I'm fine, but singing from my chest, especially, the nasal part of my voice, which so many of my songs have, unfortunately, it's like I can't push that air like I'm supposed to. And I talked to a lot of people the other night that said they've had the exact same thing going on, and they don't know why. And a lot of other people, including, God bless him, David Adam Burns, who has just made a huge name for himself on the Texas scene, but he's from Arkansas. He won Country Artist of the Year, and in his speech, he said, "This means a lot, because this is probably the most difficult year I've ever had doing this, so this really does mean a lot." And I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm never glad when that happens to another performer, but there's that relief that's in you of like, it's not just me. This is a thing for whatever reason. Yeah, it's and it's not everywhere. But it really just depends on what kind of crowd happens to show up that night, man. But yeah, we're moving in a different direction where there's a lot of disconnect.
Right, a lot of weird happenings.
Just because most of the performers you see are on TikTok, and you're not expected to applaud to your phone at the end of the song, doesn't mean we need to carry that over whenever you're in front of a live band.
I think you may be onto something. Maybe you have a new group of people coming up that they don't realize how to be at a live show.
And I don't know how that happened. I really don't. It's just, it evades me to think that anybody would be wired to not realize that there's a certain, if you want the performer to connect with you, you've got to connect with them too. If you close that line of connection, there's nothing that the person on stage can do.
Right.
Nothing at all. And there's nothing worse, and you've probably had it happen too. There's nothing worse than when you walk up on stage and go, "How's everybody doing tonight?" and no one says anything.
That's exactly what happened that night.
And I don't know what the answer is. I know and it's not even just, a difference in audience or a difference in how it's consumed. The business is changing to form itself around that, and it's counterproductive to what we're supposed to do. I mean, we're communicators,
right?
Whether it's podcast or music or journalism or whatever, we communicate. But people have to be open to taking that communication and be open to the conversational element of it. Even if it's a song about something, and maybe you've gone through it.
Right.
Just take a listen to it, see.
Right.
And if you like it, the conversational element is, maybe clap or yell or something. If you don't like it, maybe the conversational piece is, you just do the kind, "Hey, is really good," as you're walking towards the door, which is fine. But when it's absolutely nothing, I'm trying to figure out how that works, and I hope it's not that way going forward. But anyway, I'm going off on something we probably weren't planning on.
No, that's exactly how I planned it. Is to stay off the beaten path. So my first question was, what is your story? How did you get started? I've followed you since you came here. And I've, like you said, you went through you had a little health problem early on this year, and I was happy that you got over that. And
well, I'm still technically not, because I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
There are, every day I wake up not knowing what my voice is going to be able to do that day. I mean, I've had show weekends where I'm doing like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Thursday will be tough, Friday will be great, Saturday will be tough, and I have no idea why. It just falls that way. I was able to get in with a really good ENT a couple weeks ago to have him check it out, and it's what you would expect: slightly deviated septum, which they see a lot in singers, but not bad enough to where it should be causing horrible problems. I think one thing for sure that I know is I've been doing this full time for about 5 years and have not really taken a break with it, which means I've been using my voice singing anywhere between 3 to 5 hours a night, whether it's at a rehearsal or a show, pretty much nonstop, with the exception of I might take 3 or 4 days off and go somewhere. I love going to Branson. That's kind of my thing. But usually it's not any more than 3 or 4 days off. And even in that, I'm still, I'm answering emails. I'm having to post stuff on social media because you have to keep your presence.
Right.
I haven't really actually just disconnected and been quiet and just actually taken a break from it. So I had this, for whatever reason, June was booked up, August was booked up, July had nothing. And when I noticed that, I said, you know what, that never happens. I'm going to take that as a sign. So I'm going to, originally, I kept it clean just in case I was going to have sinus surgery or nasal surgery, whatever that would, sinus, nasal, whatever, for the deviated septum. I didn't know how that was going to land. So I wanted to keep it clear just in case I needed that recovery time. But now I'm looking at it as hard as it is to not sing, because it's something I love to do even more than just what I do for a living. If I want to do this as long as I possibly can, probably the best thing I can do is just take that month, not do it as much as possible, and kind of give it some time to rest up a little bit, because I've never done that. And probably by the time that I'm hoping, again, just being totally transparent, because I've never been in this state before, but hopefully by the time that the month of July is over, I imagine I'm probably going to be really itching to getting back to it.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no telling what'll happen after that. I may figure out all these, the roadblocks that we've talked about so far with how to adapt to, the changing landscape of all of this. I might snap right back to normal. I sure hope so. But yeah, that's kind of, it's where I've been at with that. But anyway, sorry, I got off of your question. You're asking about my story.
Oh, I don't. One thing I wanted to, you brought up an interesting point, in that this whole disconnect between crowd and performer really hits at the heart of what drives a lot of people who get into music, because as well as I do, when you're starting out, it can't be for the money. It's for
Right.
It's for the every performer who has a dream to perform, they see themselves on that stage, and then they see the crowd reacting, and that's what drives you is to I'm assuming I haven't done it, but just in my dreams, whenever I wanted to be a rock star, that's what I seen people applauding at the performance you did, at the song you sang, or whatever. And when you remove that kind of removes a lot of the incentive that you had initially to start. So
Exactly, because I did do it as more of a hobby before I went full time.
right.
And to the point where the job that I had working public relations for a television station right before I went full time, I was so consumed with that because that was just what the expectation was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the classic thing of, you get paid for a 40-hour week, but everybody knows you actually put in a lot more hours than that. To the point where I really wasn't able to do very much of the music thing, but I still, even though I really wasn't making money from it, I still wanted it for that exact reason. It's that connection, and it's a weird thing. You ever watch The Newsroom, Jeff Daniels?
I've seen skits from it, but I haven't actually watched it.
You would love it. There's so much in it, not only from standpoint of a journalist, but just from the standpoint of a communicator. And there's there's this portion of it where Jeff Daniels' character is having to kind of face the reality that one of the reasons why he loves his job so much is because he feels like that audience, sometimes they're the only people he has to talk to and lean on. And without that connection to them and without that feeling that he's done something good, who is he? You know,
Right.
how do you square that?
Yeah, how do
when
you
wouldn't take that away? So you're absolutely right. That's more than anything, and I've said it before too, that I've played environments where it was more of a songwriter thing, like a writer's round, and those usually, most of them don't pay because it's something that we want to do. We want to go play brand new songs we're working on, and it's a kind of a selfish thing, but in a good way. It's really creative.
So you said what was it, a songwriters round?
Yeah, writer's round. That's where they'll get anywhere between usually 3 or 4, not usually more than that, but usually 3 or 4 at a time. These writers they'll take turns playing whatever songs of theirs come to mind. Sometimes they'll play whatever their most well-known songs are, and a lot of times they'll play what they're working on. It may be something they wrote that afternoon, but it's a really creative space.
Step into tranquility. Discover handcrafted treasures from around the world. Indulge in the finest loose-leaf teas, where stress melts away and curiosity blooms. Experience serenity. Call or stop in today, Eurokaby Tea and Gift Shop. Find your moment of peace.
Are they playing in front of a crowd or in front of other performers only?
It depends. Most of the time it is in front of a crowd, but it's usually a really small crowd in a small, they usually call them listening rooms.
Right. So it's kind of like they do in comedy. They have,
right.
They'll go like they did at the comedy store in California.
That's exactly right.
They would go and they would work on their different bits that they had and see, and then they could change them and just kind of practice their stuff before they did really big shows.
Exactly. And that's where you get back to why you did it in the first place, which is you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you've got something that you want to say and you want somebody to hear it and you want to know what they think of it. And you want to either have that validation that, okay, I did something right, or if I didn't do something right, where was the disconnect? What can I change? How can I improve it? But you want that human connection, and you want to have that moment where you know that you're doing something because it's part of who you are, not just because it's the way that you're making your paycheck.
Right. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship in that you feed off of them, they feed off of you.
Exactly.
And that's neat. So back to what your story is. When did you know that you wanted to be a singer, songwriter, performer?
As long as I could remember. My mom always sang around the house, and she's got a great voice. My grandpa, he always sang, and he and his brother, back when they were younger, had decided they wanted to try to learn to play instruments, and they never really were able to put the time into it. Of course, back then, there wasn't really any spare time to be had.
Right.
But the music always flowed through the family, and it certainly bit me pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And from the time I could remember, I always was singing. I had a little beat-up guitar, which was beat up because I had no idea how to take care of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the reason why it had 6 strings was so that way if you broke one, there's 5 more. So I would play one string at a time, just whichever one was there. So I still have it somewhere. It's how that thing held up, I don't know. I did not take care of it at all. But yeah, it was just that natural thing of, I knew that the people who were on the radio, I loved what I was hearing, and I just knew that I wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I went through the typical phases of that little kids do, especially for my generation, where everybody wanted to be a Power Ranger, everybody wanted to be a cowboy. But the music thing was the only phase I never grew out of.
It was a common thread through it all.
And it was the only thing that seemed real for some reason. And I've got friends who are cowboys. That's a very real thing. But as far as what I could actually see myself being able to do, that was always, even whenever I was kind of discouraged by the typical expectations of, well, you got to have a job, you got to do this, you got to do this. It was still always an option, just because it stuck with me so much and connected with me so much when I would hear Clint Black or George Jones or whoever on the radio. That's just what I wanted to do. And whenever I was in first grade, I was already starting to try to write my own songs, and I had this 3-ring binder full of these songs I was trying to write. None of them were any good, but I would always try to find a deeper meaning in some random object, kind of like, Jerry Seinfeld will talk about finding the unordinary in the ordinary, like his Pop-Tart thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he just did that Pop-Tart movie. That started like 10 years ago. He told Howard Stern, well, I'm trying right now, I'm looking at Pop-Tarts. I love Pop-Tarts. And I'm thinking, what is it about the Pop-Tart? That's the same thing with songwriting. You look at something really ordinary and you find something a little deeper in it. Maybe what is it really? What went into this thing, like these headphones? What is it really? Or what does this particular pair of headphones mean to me? What have I recorded with them? What have I, where have I been with them? What's the story? There's always something there.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to do it, but I knew that was a thing people did. I got in trouble for that once, actually, on the playground, because we weren't supposed to have books or anything like that out there. We were supposed to be getting physical activity. So I'm out there on the swing set trying to write songs. One of the teachers comes up, "Is that a notebook you have?" And I said, I was proud. I said, "Yeah, songs I've been writing. You want to read them?" No, she didn't want to read them. No, not at all. I got in trouble on that one pretty good. But I think it worked out.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I don't even know if she'd remember that, but
you do.
She was just doing her job.
Yeah.
So we get along real well.
Speaking of when you made the switch, there's always a point in your career when you anytime you set out to do something you want to do instead of doing what society forces you to do, there's a precipice there. There's a point to where you have to make a jump and burn the ships and say, I'm going to do what I love to do, and I'm going to have faith in God or whatever you believe in. For myself, it would be God, that I'm going to be taken care of, and this is going to work.
Me too.
So at what point, I know you said you worked in PR for a TV station. What point did you know that you were ready to make that jump?
Honestly, and I don't say this, I mean, I can look back and laugh on it now, but it's getting laid off after being told I wasn't going to be, just being totally honest. I had that job when, I'll tell you the whole story because it's like I said, it's funny now. So I went to do the American Idol audition. And of course, with something like that, they filmed it a few months in advance. And if a lot of people know what happened, then there's no need for it to be on TV because everybody already knows. I mean, that's the way it works. So I only told the necessary people who I knew would keep it to themselves. Right. And well, and my boss and my immediate coworkers, because they knew what was going on and they weren't going to tell anybody. So that was fine. Well,
but don't tell Jan in accounting. She tells everything.
Well, no, oddly enough, they knew too. They didn't say anything. But yeah, we were having this meeting because they were trying to sort of transform some of the programming on the station, and one of the directors said, "We want to find new young talent. We're going to go on kind of an American Idol search for new young talent." And none of the rest of them knew yet, so I'm looking across the room at my coworkers, and we're all going, because at this point I'd already been informed. This was like a week before. It's the typical thing, you get told, "Oh yeah, we're going to keep you. Oh yeah, you don't have to worry about that." Well, then my contract comes up. It's like, okay, I have to know today, otherwise my badge won't work on Monday. And it was oh no, we don't have the funds. Okay, thanks.
Thanks for the heads up.
But yeah, my boss actually fought to get me another 2 weeks. She's like, you can't let somebody go the Friday before the contract's up. You just can't do that.
Right.
But at that moment, I was like, okay, this is the second time that this has happened at this very same place. And nothing else that I've done so far has really panned out. And the thing I always fall back on whenever I get, whenever I've gotten laid off from a job or whatever, I do the music.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, that's the thing that has not stopped at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just filmed that American Idol audition. Didn't know until the week before that they were actually going to use it, because to be fair, they didn't either. And they told me that. They said, we don't know until we start putting the show together, and we put it together a week or so in advance and just see what we've got to work with. So I found out the week before, but I'm like, you know what? Either way, if I'm going to have a chance to do this, it's probably right now. And even though I know that I got told no on the show, nobody else knows that yet, and I can't tell them, but it doesn't mean that I can't start booking shows. And it finally hit me. It's a lot like if you were a plumber or an electrician or whatever. How much you get paid depends on how much you work. So I just took it as, okay, I'm going to start lining up jobs. So that's how I took it. And the American Idol audition aired on March 1st of 2020. And thank the good Lord, immediately we were having a watch party with, a lot of my former coworkers, as a matter of fact, that we were having that in Conway. And I kind of had forgotten how the appearance had gone, because it was a strange thing. I'd never done anything like that before. Mm-hmm. And it almost felt like watching TV whenever I was filming it with them. It was it's a really weird situation to be in. So in some respects, I was seeing this for the first time myself, because I had forgotten some of the things that we'd talked about. And I was a little concerned, because I was like, I know I didn't sing the song very well, because once again, I had I just gotten over a cold whenever we filmed that. So I don't know why all these pivotal moments, I always have something go wrong with my voice. But I was a little concerned. I was like, I know it wasn't as good as it should have been. And I let out the gnarliest cough like halfway through the first verse. They were nice enough to cut that out. I didn't ask them to, because I hated to be that guy to go, hey, could you cut that out? But they cut it out, and they were wonderful to work with, by the way. So thankfully, but after I let that cough out, it was just like, it was totally downhill from there, because I'm like, they know what I'm going through right now. But it turned out to actually be all right, and the response to it, the second it went to commercial, my phone started buzzing, and it didn't stop. It just kept going and kept going. And the people I had who were reaching out to me, well-known songwriters and people in the music business, just an unbelievable response. And the whole time I'm thinking, I got told no. This shouldn't be happening right now. I think the ones who get told yes should be getting the calls and things. I was just happy to have a chance to put myself out there and maybe get a few more gigs from it.
Right.
And within a couple of weeks, I had been talking to Golden Corral, because I name dropped them on the show right before I went in, because we were there for about 14 hours. So everybody was starving when it got to the end of the night by the time we actually filmed it. And I jokingly said, we're either getting a golden ticket or Golden Corral tonight, and I don't care which one. I'm fine with either. Well, they saw that, and so they reached out to me and were nice enough to offer me a pretty big gift card. But I said, well, hey, instead of that, let's talk about working together. Because my thought was, Jeff Foxworthy has not done commercials for y'all in a long time, and I am your clientele.
Right.
Use me.
Right.
So we were starting to talk about that, and things were going really well. And I'd been contacted by a producer for a prominent production company that was working with The Circle, the Grand Ole Opry's TV network, on a show. And the conversations were going great for that too. And I'm like, wow, things are actually happening now. And whether or not anything actually comes to fruition, I'm in with some really good people who I get along with very well. I respect them. They respect me. And it's that thing where, in show business, most opportunities that come up don't work out. There's a million ideas that people come up with every day. But just because this one doesn't work out doesn't mean that something down the road won't work out. And if you work really well with somebody, they're going to remember you, and they'll call you whenever there's something that's a good fit for you. So I was just happy to at least be in it, you know? And I had people who were offering for me to come in and headline at some pretty substantial venues compared to what I was playing up to that point. I was playing coffee houses, small bars, and restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an offer to play like a theater as a headliner, just me and my acoustic guitar. And I didn't know what to make of all that.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks later, all gone. President comes on the TV and announces that there's a national shutdown for the next 14 days, which turned into about a year and a half.
Right.
And it was all gone. And I thought I'd put together a brand new band right before that happened. And we'd had 2 shows that were totally booked and finalized, and one that we were just about to finalize. And when that happened, we were like, okay, well, we're probably going to have to cancel the first 2 because they're closer to the end of April. So, we don't know for sure how long this is going to go, but we'll probably have to cancel those. That's okay. It just keep going on and on and on to the point where some of the other opportunities I had, everybody's telling me, we have no idea how long this is going to go on. We've talked to our inside people. They don't even know what's going on. Just sit tight.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to close up shop for a while, but be ready, because whenever we're given the green light, we're going to do this.
Hurry up and wait.
Which is not uncommon in the music business, but this was a situation where everybody wanted to get to work, and now we couldn't.
Right.
And genuinely nobody knew how this was all going to go. So it really was a day-by-day thing. And, I would hear from people about, well, they're talking about if they come up with some sort of a treatment, then we can probably, within the next 2 months, we can open things back up and we can start up on this. And it took forever, man, which, of course, we hadn't had that happen before.
Right.
And, I learned a lot about myself through that. I know that might sound a little corny to say, but yeah, and it was a good pause, especially with everything that had happened 2 weeks before that, for me to really slow down and go, okay, let me try to process everything that's happened up to this point and really think about where I go from here. Unfortunately, the thing that I did that I swore I would never do was, when things opened back up, I started treating it like a regular 9-to-5 job, where I just started booking whatever. Whoever called first, that's what I would book. To the point where, here 4 or 5 years later, a lot of the things that I was going to do 4 or 5 years ago, and that I was going to do as soon as the pandemics, kind of got controlled,
mm-hmm.
I still haven't done that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've slowly realized that there's some unfinished business I've got in some places, but it really, that whole, I give credit to Peter Cohen, the executive casting producer. He's the one who called me, and I hope they don't mind me saying this, Nathan Honeycutt from the Arkansas Country Music Awards passed my information and stuff along to Peter, because they had worked with him. They knew him for a number of years, and would ask him, who are you hearing? Who's somebody we might be interested in? And Nathan passed my information, a couple of videos along to Peter Cohen, and Peter's the guy who called me, and he told me straight up. He said, "Yeah, this is what we're doing," and he had taken the time to listen to a full record I had put out, my first record. He went and watched a few interviews I'd done. He had read my bio, all these things that he didn't have to take the time to do. If he was obligated to do anything, which they weren't, it was nice enough for them to consider me at all. But if there was anything you would think that they would look at, it would just be these 3 short little videos that I was asked to email. You wouldn't think that they would have time to look at anything other than that. But the fact that he did, and that he took the time to try to really understand who I was and what I was trying to do, when he explained what he thought my role on the show could be and why it might work. Because he asked me if I had any concerns, and I said, well, I know I'm not really what I normally see on the show, and I know I don't really fit in with what usually works on the show. And he said, well, yeah, you're right. It's what you do is a little different, but sometimes different works, and we want to give it a shot because we like what we're hearing.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he had really taken the time to understand what I did, and he really cared about the artistic side of it, and he cared about the contestants themselves as people, that's why I did that show. And they were fantastic people. Anything negative you hear about them, I mean, I suppose it's everybody's got their side of whatever stories, but man, they were so wonderful to work with. And even after the show was over, helped me out, put me in touch with a lot of really good people in the business to kind of lean on and get some help from, get some advice. And they didn't have to do that. They didn't make a dime off of me.
Mm-hmm.
I was on one time.
Right.
They got nothing out of it. If I succeed, all they get out of it is knowing that they helped somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that that's all they cared about, they're good people. So
Mm-hmm.
it was, even though the pandemic really squelched a lot of what was supposed to go on after that, I will never stop being grateful for that opportunity, because that did put me in a position where I'm still able to do what I love for a living no matter what.
Mm-hmm. So what's next for you? What are your future plans?
That's kind of where I'm at right now of figuring that out, because I've realized that I've kind of been punching the time card, and it's a strange thing when people who are kind of your regulars who come out to see you every time you play in their town, when they start saying, you know, you ought to go to this place or this place, you know, different towns, and I think they'd love you there. We want to see you go somewhere else. It's not that they want you to leave.
Mm-hmm.
They just want other people to hear what they're hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that even though I'm fortunate enough, I could make a living just playing music right in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great that there are so many businesses that support that and will actually focus on live entertainment. I could do that, hopefully, fingers crossed, for the rest of my life, and I would be happy doing that.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the crowds were still coming out and people were still cool with hearing my music and sang along and listened and had a good time, I would be happy doing that. But there's always this part of me that I like the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
and I like going to new places I haven't been before and trying some different things. And I know in my heart that even as much as things have changed, especially in the music business, the one thing that hasn't changed is if you want to reach somebody, you got to go to them.
Yeah.
Even with the internet and everything, it's, if anything, with the internet, it's harder to reach them now because there's so many people trying to do the same thing.
It's hard to stand out from all the noise.
Yeah. And I feel like if I just take this time, which, during the month of July, I'm kind of planning to just sort of disappear and have no plans and just do whatever feels right from day to day. But there's definitely going to be a lot of soul searching. The one thing I can tell you for sure is, you made a comment earlier that was spot on about, instead of having the 9-to-5 job, I want to do what I love. And when was the moment I realized that I wanted to do that for a living? Kind of having the realization now that even though I enjoy playing other people's songs, because there are a lot of artists who have influenced me and songs that I really enjoy playing,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't put enough of a focus on my own songs. I've got a lot of songs I've written that I'm excited about and proud of, and I just want to play them for people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay if not everybody likes them.
Right.
Not everybody's going to like everything, and nothing is going to be liked by everybody. That's just part of it, and it's okay. I would rather somebody know from the get-go who I am and what I do and make the decision on if they like it or not, than for me to kind of hide that and do stuff that I think they might like, but I'm not sure. But I don't want to really go too far into my own thing. I kind of want to be all things to all people,
Right.
even
Be
though
safe.
we all know you can't do that. And what happens then is I play a lot of kind of half-A versions of songs that people love that are never going to sound as good as the versions that they love because it's not what I do and I don't know the songs as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's something that doesn't connect with me personally, I'm not going to be able to make it connect with somebody else, which is not fair to them, and it's not fair to whoever wrote those songs either.
Right.
So I'm not selfishly, but just from a belief thing. I'm seeing so many of the people that I get requests to play, like, play this artist or that artist. The one theme that I've noticed is I don't know that any of them really did cover songs for very long.
Right.
I think they all took that leap and just said, I'm an original artist, I'm going to play all of my songs. And it's not easy to do that, but I can't make a living doing halfway versions of other people's songs because it's, I think people would much rather listen to somebody who can play them a lot better than me. But the one thing I do know is I can play my songs because I believe in them.
Mm-hmm.
They mean something to me, and I know it's going to mean a lot more to me to make that connection with somebody with something that I created than trying to replicate something that someone else created, knowing that I'm never going to be as good as the genuine article.
And it's, like you said, being true to yourself, to be true to yourself and to really express yourself as an artist, you have to, create. It's not like you can take someone else. I mean, I can't make a living. I mean, you could make a living if you were really good at copying Rembrandt's or whatever paintings, but to be, like you said, to kind of fulfill that desire you have in your heart.
I just realized you had perfectly good coasters sitting right here, and I put it right on the tablecloth.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. No.
Can you tell I'm a professional musician? It's always the answer is right in front of my nose, and I don't see it.
I think one of the things we do in anything that we do is we try to compare ourselves to others, and we compare ourselves not to the worst but to the best. So if you take any professional artist and let's say you take Journey, whoever, just that's the first one that came to mind. Their first album, every song on it wasn't a hit.
Their first two or three really didn't take off. Wasn't until Steve joined the band really that they started having the hits.
So there's going to be most albums. There's one or two songs that are good on them. It's an oddity to find an album where you love every single song,
right? And
it has to be that artist is actually reaching out and you're connecting with them, like you said. So I can think of like when I was growing up, it was in the 90s. So like some Alice in Chains where they were just putting out album after album, where there may be one song that you didn't like and the rest you did, and then they did Tiny Music. And so you have these preconceived notions where you're starting off at the end instead of the beginning, and you compare yourself to that. And I think that's a natural part of growing is what you're doing, and that you're taking this time to reflect inwardly and to kind of reorient yourself and right the ship.
And you're spot on. I don't know that anybody can ever truly get out of that phase of, I'll listen to a Chris Christopherson song, and all I can think is, I don't write anything that good. Well, like you said, it's okay.
Right.
As long as I'm writing the best thing that I can write, and I'm trying to, if I can focus on writing something better than the last song that I wrote, that's where I'll find what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
If I'm trying to write something better than Chris Christopherson wrote, it's never going to happen. He's the greatest songwriter that ever lived, and I'll take no arguments on that. The conversation's over. It's, but anybody like that, Christopherson, Dylan, Prine, Guy Clark, any of them.
Mm-hmm.
If you compare yourself to the greatest of all time, you're never going to win, because you're going to beat yourself up with every single thing you do. And it's something that I've noticed, and I'll just say it. I'll leave out names, And anybody can fill in the blank with whoever they want, but there's an artist who had a lot of success in recent years that was doing something very different. It was a harsh departure from how country music had gone for the last decade or so. And the terms that got used were real, raw. And someone actually said to a friend of mine, man, you need to write songs like that. You need to try to sound like that guy. Do something real. Do something real. Sound like that guy. Those are two totally different things.
Mm-hmm.
But we do that to ourselves more, I think, than other people do to us. And it's one of the reasons I think there are a lot of songwriters that don't listen to music because they don't want to have that thought in their mind of comparing themselves to someone else or even indirectly trying to do something that someone else did. They just want to stay in whatever's in my mind, that's what I've got to work with to write a song. And it really is a struggle, especially because everything's so accessible now. If there's one thing that's hard to get away from, it's media. Whether it's TV or music or whatever, it's everywhere. So it's a challenge. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm kind of hoping that disconnecting myself as much as I can, which is strange because I'm trying to disconnect myself so I can make a better connection. And somehow, somewhere in the middle, I think I'll find whatever the common ground might be and whatever the answer might be to everything. But yeah, it certainly is hard to really just separate yourself from everything else because we're trained to compete, especially in the music business. They always talk about, well, it's not a competition. Well, it's not until it is. Because the second that you're trying to, when you're doing it independently, it's not a competition. You want all your friends to do well and you're helping out each other and you love playing shows together and you're talking about, hey, listen to what my friend wrote. But the second that you try to do it on a bigger level where you're working with a major company, be it a record label or a publishing company or whatever, there are a handful. In order to keep your record deal, you got to have a hit. Well, how many slots are there on the chart? Okay, well, if it's a top 100 chart, how many are actually getting airplay? Well, if it's below 40, it's probably not going to get any airplay. It's not really going to get frequent rotation until it's in the top 20. So you're looking at 20 slots. At that point, in order just for nothing more than survival, you're expected to compete. And it's just counterproductive. And I think that's why it's happened so much more in my lifetime. We've had so much music that sounds like everything else because everybody's expected to compete. Well, we want something like that. Okay, well, can we not think about how did that come to be? Let's trace it back to whatever the original that was. Somebody took a chance, and Florida Georgia Line, as much as people might want to hate on them, they were the first to do what they did. They started that movement. When Cruise came out on the radio, it didn't sound like everybody else. It stuck out. Everybody started copying after that. So instead of going, we need another one of those, go back to that original and say, who took a chance on that and who said, we want to take a departure from everything else that's going on. We believe in what this artist is doing, and we want to let them do what they're doing instead of asking them to do what somebody else is doing. So all of that makes it really hard, even on the independent level now, because with TikTok and everything, we're expected to try to compete with the artists that are on major labels, and it's so difficult because we just don't have the backing. And it's not even as much a financial thing anymore as it is having the connections. You know, if I wanted to send out and it's something I'm going to do, and it's not easy to do, but I'm going to start servicing some of my singles to country radio. There are very few stations that actually are allowed to take them. If I wanted to send out my latest single to country radio, I could send it to all the independent stations in the country, and a lot of them probably would be allowed to listen to it. I can't send it to iHeart stations.
iHeart, Clear Channel.
iHeart and Cumulus are the two big ones that really, they can't take unsolicited material. They have their sources that they get it from, and that's just the way it works. It's hard to compete with that when you aren't able, as an independent artist, to get it to all the same outlets. But yeah, it's
it's funny you say that, to getting back to where that came from. And you would think that radio, I say big radio like it's a smoke-filled dark room with people that make decisions. It may not be, but I feel like it is.
You'd be surprised. Sometimes it is.
They never, in the history of radio since Marconi or whoever, Tesla really, but they never had any competition because that was the medium in which people consumed their music. And, you had records and stuff, but people would hear it on the radio and want to buy the records. Now you have internet, you have all these different platforms that people consume their music from. And, YouTube was big for a long time. And, you had artists that, like the lead singer, I don't know why Journey keeps coming up, but the lead singer for Journey got his gig from YouTube. So you would think they would say, let's go back to our roots. And what was that? It was most of the radio stations in the country were all independent, and they all took, if they had something good, there was somebody there that would listen to it. It would get approved, and they would spin it.
And I would really encourage people to go back and look at the Telecom Act of the mid-'90s, which that's what changed everything, because it allowed a single company to own up to 8 radio stations in any given market, which is how the giant companies got started.
Mm-hmm.
iHeartRadio used to be Clear Channel, and that's how they got started, was being able to own up to 8 stations. That's why if you go to a radio station, it's usually not a radio station. There's usually multiple in the same building.
Right.
Because
like
whatever
franchise.
whatever company owns that station, also, if they own a country station, they own a rock station and a pop station, maybe a talk station, sports. That act made it legal for them to do so. Beforehand, they weren't able to own that many. And the bigger companies figured out, if we can own up to 8 in any given market, well, how many markets are there? Okay, do the math. We can own, then you end up with your final number. I don't know how many stations there are. So if you do 8 per market, I mean, Arkansas is not a market. There are 2 or 3 markets within Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of business to be had there. But it's, like you said, used to, you could send it to everybody, and independent stations would take a chance. They would play something that was sent to them, and of course, a thing that happened back then that's happening now that, for whatever reason, nobody's catching it, and it'll just have to work itself out the same way. There was a problem with payola years ago, back when independent radio was still alive and well, where people would pay program directors and DJs to play their songs on the air. So you had music that maybe they didn't really care for or believe in, but they're playing it because they're making money to play it.
Right. They got paid minimum wage to be a DJ, and this guy was giving them $100.
Exactly. And, of course, eventually they made that illegal. Well, now the same thing is happening with playlists. That's the big thing now that we're supposed to aim for. So whenever I put out my latest EP, you can pitch a song to what they call editorial playlists. Those are the biggies.
Like Spotify. And
Right. Those are the ones where you actually stand a chance to get heard by a new audience because they have a large number of followers.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever they add on there, there's a really good chance people aren't going to skip it because they trust this playlist the same as they would trust their mainstream radio station.
Right.
But the thing is, there are a lot of playlists out there that if you want your song on there, they have a fee.
Mm.
And you have to pay that fee to get your song on the playlist. And that's perfectly legal right now. And nobody's seen the connection. And I don't know how.
So what's that look like? Is it like $2,000, $10,000?
It really depends. I'm sure that there are some that are in the thousands. If you can get in touch with the right people for some of them, I'm sure it would go that high. But you know, I've seen numbers anywhere from $50 to $300 or $400. But still,
greasing palms. It's not true.
And there's no guarantee of an ROI on that.
Mm-hmm.
And really, especially nowadays with, you know, in my lifetime, the economy goes up, it goes down. Nobody knows what it's doing, and that's going to continue till the end of time. money always is going to be somewhat tight because you never know what's coming next, and you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and then have that basket fall apart. So, do you spend that $200 or $300 to have your song on a playlist, and maybe not see the numbers after that because everything is so. And I'll even show you if I can pull it up. There are apps for every major streaming platform out there to where the artists and the labels can track how their releases are doing. So, for instance, if I pull up Spotify, it's the same thing everybody else sees. There's an entirely different program. It's called Spotify for Artists. And I can see what are my current top songs, what playlists am I being featured on, and I can see whatever playlists people are listening to my music. It'll go through all of them. It'll show me how many times it's been listened to in a certain time period. It'll show me what number of listeners I've had each day of the month, where they're listening to my music from, the demographics. Are they male? Are they female? What age range are they in? It'll show what other artists they're listening to. It'll also show what countries and even what cities they're listening in. You can track everything now. So you can tell pretty easily if you're actually getting a true return on investment with something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But do you take that gamble? And also the big thing is, at what point is somebody going to step in and go, we're focusing more on streaming now than anything else? To the point where even the big radio companies have streaming platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And they have podcasts that they feature as exclusive podcasts on their network.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're all adopting this, doesn't everybody need to play by the same rules?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the Wild West.
It is, and had I been fortunate enough to have any kind of a break even 10, 12 years ago, this stuff would have eventually happened, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's, the problems are always going to come to a head and you got to face them. But that's part of what I think has been such a challenge for myself and other artists who I've talked to, that it's all happening now.
Mm-hmm.
Everything keeps changing, and it's just like when Napster came around. The labels didn't see it coming. Even the experts that could have warned them about it, they wouldn't listen, and it punched them right in the teeth. And they didn't start fixing the problem until the damage had already been done. And that happens every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the answer for that is, but it's a frustrating thing to see that it's happening, and knowing that I just have to take whatever the result of it is and try to adapt to it. I've probably made this a very negative and
No, not at all. You just kind of given it's really kind of what I was shooting for, to give somebody that has, that wants to do this. You take a young person, and this is we're kind of taking a snapshot of what it looks like from your point of view to do that. So that way they know what they're up against.
And I did for a little while. I was going around and talking to some school kids, and playing some songs for them and talking to them about what this business is like. The one thing that always got said when we were younger that I really wish they hadn't said was, if you believe in yourself, dreams do come true. That's never been the case. It's not that easy. Because what does believe in yourself mean? You use that broad term, but if you break it down, that means a lot more. To believe in yourself, you got to put your money where your mouth is. You have to believe in yourself. You've got to be willing to say, I'm going to do this because I really think I'm good at it, and I think this is what I'm meant to do. I'm going to cut out my own safety net. I'm going to cut it out from under me. I'm putting all of my eggs in this basket. I'm not going to have a fallback plan. If I truly believe in myself, I'm going to have to go through every pitfall that's about to come in front of me. And Steve Harvey, I'm sure you've heard him talk about the jump. The first time that you jump and you pull your cord, your parachute won't open. You're going to fall. You're going to break some bones, and you're going to get scarred up. But you got to jump again. You got to jump until you pull your cord and the parachute comes out and you land safely. No matter what area you're trying to get into. If you're going to believe in yourself and you're actually going to do this, there's a lot that goes into it. And I'm not going to, I definitely don't want to discourage anybody, because I think that it's healthy to have that belief in yourself and to be willing to put in the work for it.
Right.
But we don't need to sugarcoat it, and we don't need to lie to anybody.
Mhm.
You're going to have to put in a lot of work, and there's going to be so many days where you don't feel like doing it anymore. There's going to be days where you would rather be doing anything other than this, and it's going to take those little reminders when you play a song that you wrote for a crowd that half of them are listening and half of them aren't, but you play that one song that you have somebody come up to you afterwards and say, you don't know what that song meant to me. I went through the same thing, and they start telling you this very personal story that's painful for them to relive, but they're trusting you with it because they heard something that you said in that song that made them feel like you would understand. And it's those little nuggets like that that remind you why you're doing it, and you go, okay, tonight was kind of a bad night, but that one thing, I'm aiming for that one person to be everybody in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make that connection to everybody. So at least you're still having that go on. But there are so many days where you feel like no matter what you do, you just can't get it going.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a decision every day. Nobody's forcing you to keep doing this. But every day when you wake up, you have to decide, am I going to do this again today? Or am I going to quit and go do something that I know is not going to make me happy because I don't really feel like it's what I'm supposed to be here to do.
Mm-hmm.
And how many years down the road are you going to look back and go, man, I wish I would have actually given it a shot? Because everybody's got to do something. And everybody's here for a reason. And if you don't pursue what you think that reason is, maybe over time you realize that what you thought the reason you were here is not really why you're here. But if you keep following the road, if you don't stray from that and you stay on the general path that appears to be the path that's laid out for you, yeah, there are going to be roadblocks. That's always going to happen. Even after you get where you think you're trying to get, there are still going to be problems.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stay on that path, you will figure out why you're here. It may take you the rest of your life, but nobody is put here just to exist. Everybody's here for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the journey. And you always hear people who make it, the one thing that they always say is the destination was the journey.
Right.
And that's one reason why, and again, not to be negative, but there are a lot of artists out there right now that didn't have a journey. You know, it's, with platforms like TikTok, there are artists that went straight from singing songs on their phones to having a record deal. And like Bailey Zimmerman has talked about that. He had to learn how to do this on tour. You know, he's playing stadiums, and he said, there are a lot of things that I had to learn. I just got thrown into this. And God bless him, man. He's doing it. He's, as my friend Luke Williams says, he's doing the dang thing. And he's figuring it out. You have to figure it out at some point. And used to, if you hadn't gone through 10, 15 years of absolute heck, and they always called it paying your dues. If you hadn't done that, man, they wouldn't even open the door for you. And everything's changed now. But the one thing I can promise you, you can't get along scot-free forever. You're always going to have hurdles.
I think
Be willing to put in the work now.
Yeah. That reminds me of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Carl Jung. Jordan Peterson introduced me to Carl Jung, so I started reading Jung. And I'm not going to try to even attempt to butcher the Latin phrase, but essentially what it means is what you most seek lies in in the place you least want to go. So that which you most seek lies in the place you least want to go. So whatever it is that you really are afraid of, what you don't want to do, that is where the princess is, so to speak, is in the dark castle. So,
and I know where that is for me. But again, it's how do we adapt to what it's become?
mm-hmm.
So And here we go. Here I'm contradicting myself now. Everything is starting to uncloud, and I'm realizing, oh, yeah, perhaps I've been a little hypocritical.
So, hey, we're all human. So, speaking of that, is there one person that you could say that influenced you the most?
Man, I got to tell you, the reason I started singing was because of George Jones. I wanted to do that.
Oh, possum.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason I started playing guitar was because of Ace Frehley. Once I discovered KISS, that was it for me.
That is a broad spectrum.
George
Jones, Ace Frehley.
You would think. But it's really, they both said the same thing. They just said it in different ways.
Right,
you know?
yeah.
But that was really it for me. And for the longest time, I only played rock and roll. No country. I abandoned the country stuff, man.
Mm-hmm.
Even put on a fake accent like I wasn't from Arkansas. You know, I tried killing my accent. That took so much work, but it's been able to get me a couple of voiceover jobs over the years because I can quickly go to Time Life Presents Love Ballads of the 70s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but that was what started me off. And then once I realized, hey, this is who I am. There's nothing wrong with being a country kid, and there's nothing wrong with country music. That's musically, I was going after the rock stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Lyrically, the country music is what I was going after.
Mm-hmm.
And once I realized there's a happy medium, and I'll tell you, one of the first people that made me realize, well, two of them, because it was about the same time that I really started diving deep into both of them, Travis Tritt and Chris Stapleton, which this was way before Chris got his record deal.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, he played in a bluegrass band called Exit 81 for a long time. And they went to a club one night and they saw the Steel Drivers before they got their record deal. And which for those who don't know, Chris was in a band called the Steel Drivers Bluegrass Band before he went solo. And they had this live record they'd made at the Station Inn in Nashville, which is an old bluegrass club. And they were taking that around everywhere they went, and that served as their demo to try to get a deal. And my dad got a copy of it. We've still got it to this day, and I would listen to these songs like Midnight Train to Memphis, If It Hadn't Been for Love. Like, okay. It is bluegrass, but this guy's doing something a little bit different, especially vocally.
Mm-hmm.
He's a blues singer. There's a medium somewhere here. There's an in-between. And the same thing with Travis Tritt. Of course, as a kid, I knew Here's a Quarter. I knew Trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Once I started listening to the records, and I could hear he's influenced by the exact same people I'm influenced by. And he figured out how it all goes together. And for some songs, it doesn't go together. Some songs are very much one thing. You know, on this new record I've got, there's a song called Making a Living. That's a rock song. I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's a country song. It probably fits with, you know, how... I'll just say it, how open to interpretation country music has become.
There's so many blurred lines now. That
exactly.
It's just music.
Well, and it really is just the same way that pop music used to, rock songs and even some country songs would be on the pop charts because pop was just the all-encompassing popular,
right,
where it came from. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, yeah, to lie to ourselves and say that, every song that's labeled as country is country. No, it's not. If you go look for my record, it's labeled as country, but Making a Living is a rock song. That's where, and the solo was totally, that's where my Ace Frehley and Ted Nugent, Tony Iommi, all the guys that I grew up looking up to as guitar players, that's where that influence comes from. You know, and then a little bit further on the record, you've got songs like I Bought Her Roses or the title track, The High Road, which has a lot of country influence to it, but also it's got, you know, the influence that I've had from artists like Bob Seger and the Eagles. You know, and there's a lot that flows into that. But and now I'm feeling like I'm going off on a tangent.
Yeah.
I forgot where I was actually going with that.
I'm just kind of your influence.
Oh yeah, right. All right, so I was on topic. Don't need to second guess myself.
So who are you listening to right now? Who do you really like?
You know, I'm really, I wish I could say that I was real up to date on new stuff, but it's kind of part of what I've been talking about figuring out who I am and where I go from here. Mo Pitney, who's one of, if there is a new artist that I listen to, Mo Pitney's certainly one of them. He wrote a song called "I Like the Old Stuff Better," and that's kind of where I'm at. I've been going back and finding a lot of groups from even the '90s that, as a kid, I would hear some of their songs, but I never dug deeper. And that's the thing, especially now that there's been a little bit of a resurgence of '90s country. A lot of bands who maybe didn't get their fair shake back in the day, now they're getting the chance to come back and have a second go around of things. One of those is a band called Black Hawk from the '90s. Had "Goodbye Says It All." That was their big hit. Of course, I remember that song, but when I really started digging into them, I was part of a house band at TC's Midtown Grill in Conway for Sunday night open jam is what they call it. They have a house band, and people can come up and sing or play with the band, whatever they want to do. And Shane Thornton would always want to sing "I'm Not Strong Enough to Say No," which was a Black Hawk song. And I hadn't heard that before he did it. And the harmonies are just killer on that song. And lyrically, it's like, how did this not become one of the biggest hits of the '90s? And so I bought, a while back, I went with my buddy Sharp Dunaway and his daughter in London when we went to St. Louis to see Metallica. And we went to a really cool old record store there in St. Louis. And I was looking through the CDs, and there was the greatest hits, Black Hawk Greatest Hits. And so I bought that, and I've started listening to it religiously. And it's still, right now I've got a rental car. Mine's in the shop getting some hail damage worked out. I brought I'm like, okay, I want to bring, because this is always, I want to hear "Goodbye Says It All," "I'm Not Strong Enough to Say No." There you have it. Postmark Birmingham. I can listen to those songs every day, and a lot of times do. And I wanted to have them, like, if there's one CD I've got to bring with me, I want to bring that, so I know I've always got that in the rental car. And then I get in and I'm like, oh yeah, they don't make CD players anymore. Broke my heart. Yeah, I've been digging back and listening to a lot of those, and artists that for whatever reason I never really gave a fair chance, just because for whatever reason I guess I didn't hear enough to really think about digging deeper than whatever I heard. You know, the one hit wonder thing, I think, kind of hurts a lot of people's careers in that way, because if you get one or two songs that everybody loves, the consequence of that potentially is those are the only two they want to hear, and they want to hear them all the time.
Right.
Maybe you've got, like, the same case with them. Postmark Birmingham is such a beautiful song, and it'll hit you right between the eyes. And it wasn't one of their huge hits, but it really should have been. I love going back and listening to stuff like that. A lot of lyrical stuff, and it probably comes through in my music. I love really sad songs. I don't know why that is, but there's just this, when you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to say, I'm not okay, and here's why. And you're telling those stories. It's not that I enjoy the pain of it. I enjoy the humanity.
Right.
You know, that there's too much perfection, and there's too much everything's going great. Because most times life isn't like that.
Well, if you look at art overall, you see the best art come out of the worst times. And if there's any, silver lining in bad times, it's that the art that comes out of it's going to be remarkable. Because people do their best when they're under pressure.
Exactly. And that's when you're at your most honest, I think. I have to really work at it to write a really positive, upbeat song. And I know that might sound bad, but whenever you go through something that's even the least bit traumatic to you, there's so much that's going through your head. There's no shortage of things to put to paper. And as a matter of fact, I Bought Her Roses, that song, when I went into the studio to record that with Travis Mobley, he said, how long is this song? Because I played a little, what we call scratch track. So I played acoustic guitar and just sang a rough vocal of it, so we'd have something to lay the rest of the instruments down to. So I played that. He hit stop, and he turned around slowly and said, how long is this song? And I said, I was hoping you could tell me. So he opened the software again and went back, and he goes, 7 minutes and 38 seconds. I don't think we're going to get that one on radio. So I said, okay, well, there's an extra verse here that I'm not just thrilled with. It's not really necessary. I'll cut that one out. And I'll cut a couple of lines out of the chorus. Okay, great. So we did it again. 6:18. Well, I sat there and I rewrote pretty much the entire song, restructured it, moved lines around, and within about half an hour, I had what you hear on record now. And I think it was like 4:19 or something like that. And we said, that's fine.
Right.
If there's a 4 in front of it, that's another Nashville thing that you want to keep it under 4 minutes. But man, I don't really subscribe to that.
Mm-hmm.
Sharp always tells me, you're the Queensryche of country music. You average like 5.5, 6 minutes a song. You don't do the 3.5 minute thing.
Skinnerd.
Yeah, or Skinnerd. See, I wish, because if I were able to put these epic 6-minute guitar solos on the end of songs, that'd be great. I sort of, even when my songs are 4 or 5 minutes long, I still kind of take the Roger Miller approach. I'm singing to you, and there's not a whole lot of playing in between.
Right.
But I do wish that I could learn a little more from him, because Roger Miller was totally on the other end of the spectrum.
Oh, yeah.
He had songs that were a minute. I can't remember which one it was. One of his songs was 1:12, one of his big hits. The entire song, 1:12. And there was one thing, if you ask anybody about why Roger Miller is one of the greatest songwriters of all time, it's because he knew when to get in and when to get out.
Mm-hmm.
He would start the song, he would say everything he needed to say about the subject, and then that's it. We don't need to say anything else about it. We're done here.
Or he could write a whole song and not say a word, just make a bunch of sounds, and it sounded so good.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the best, dude. One of the best, for those who don't know, that's a jazz technique called scatting. Everybody used to hearing it in like "Dang Me" or something like that, but he was so good at it that when he was doing solo acoustic shows, if he were singing "River in the Rain," which is one of his most emotional songs, and it's that back and forth that I love about a guy like Roger, because there's a sadness to it, and then there's a hope in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a great guitar solo in the song. Well, so many times when he would do that live, if he was just playing by himself with an acoustic guitar, he would just scat the guitar solo, and it was beautiful. I mean, he had so much jazz influence.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know what that's. I thought it was like all automatopoeias, and it was just what he had going on in his head.
Well, sometimes what he had going on is, I was watching a live stream once where Whispering Bill Anderson was answering questions from people who commented. And I'm like, I love Bill Anderson. I want to see him smile. I want to know that I put a smile on his face. So I just wrote a comment, "What's your best Roger Miller story?" And he started laughing. And he said, "Oh, when you ask me about Roger Miller, I just can't help but smile. I miss him dearly." He said, "My family and his family used to vacation together every summer. And one year we went down to the beach, and I had this old 8mm camera footage from it. Of course, there was no audio on it, but Roger walks out on the beach in his swim trunks and his little old bitty chicken legs, and he looks at the camera and he goes, 'They always swell up in the summertime.'"
Oh, you gotta love Roger Miller. I grew up on Roger Miller.
Yeah. But he was another one that's, to go back to your influence question,
Mm-hmm.
what am I listening to now? He was another one that really, until college, I hadn't really listened to him.
Mm-hmm.
I knew a couple of the songs. I knew King of the Road. I knew
Mm-hmm.
Dang Me. But to go back and listen to his entire catalog, and even, back in the day, subjects that we just don't talk about now were very commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
He had a song called "One Dying and a Burying."
Yep.
And that would never go over today. And I've written a few songs that are kind of a little bit darker in nature like that. It's because that's the music I'm influenced by.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of kept those songs to myself because I don't know how they go over nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting to think that's the benchmark. And like what we were saying a while ago about always comparing yourself, if you're always going to compare yourself to Rembrandt, how are you ever going to be able to put paint on the canvas? Because
Right.
you're not going to get that at the end. But in some respects, we look at songs like that as the benchmark. But then we also say, "Whoa, that subject matter is a bit too. That's too deep. That's a bit too close. We don't want to do that."
Mm-hmm.
It's honest,
Right.
If
And
we're
somebody
trying to,
somebody somewhere needs to hear it.
thank you. That's a struggle. There's a song that I've written that I'm already working on a follow up to this current EP. We're about halfway through it. That's the way we decided to do it, is because with my schedule and Travis's schedule, we don't get a ton of time to be in the studio. So instead of putting out a whole record of 10 or 12 songs, we're putting it out as we get 4 or 5 done that fit together very nicely. We'll put those out. There's one I've written that is in that vein. I played it one time when it was a small room, and it was just pretty much I knew almost everybody that was in there, and so I knew that they knew what I was influenced by, and so it wouldn't be a shock to them. But it's exactly what you're saying. Is I know if it's gone through my head, it's gone through somebody else's head, and it's just a human thought process. But for whatever reason, man, we don't really do that anymore. I don't know why, but it's exactly like you said. Somebody needs to hear it. And the thing I always tell people is country music at its core, when we're doing our job, is we make people feel like they're not alone and that somebody else knows exactly what they're going through. If we turn our backs on that, we've got a problem.
Amen to that. Well, Ryan, we're at almost an hour and a half now, so
I have a tendency to, do you know Drew Brent?
I do not.
Y'all should meet, man, because he does a lot of this kind of stuff too. And he told me once he had this show, it was the River Valley Spotlight in Russellville. And the first time that I was on the program, usually it was like 10, 15 minutes would be the interview, and I talked for half an hour. And the next time I was on, he goes, well, I bumped the format up now. Now we do half-hour episodes, and I talk for an hour. And the third time he goes, you have a way about changing the format every time that you come on.
Hey, I'm good to go 3 hours. The only thing is I want to get this out before the concert, right. And it takes twice as long to the production takes twice as long as the actual interview. I guess you would say. Right. I'm gonna take a brief moment to pause here to make sure that our camera's still rolling, and then we'll come and we'll go out. I guess the only thing left is I know you do a lot of venues in the state. Do you travel to Texas or Oklahoma any at all?
I've traveled a little bit, and that's actually one thing I'm wanting to do a lot more of. I enjoy that a lot. Like I said, going to different places and meeting new people and experiencing new things. So I usually do maybe a couple of fly-ins each year, and I try to do a few shows that are out of state, but I want to branch out and do a little bit more of that for sure.
Right. And you're going to be at the Broadway Memorial Park on June 15th.
That's right.
Here in Booneville. And how would you rate that venue compared to a lot of the others in our state?
Well, we talked about it last year, man. Whoever did that, they need to be given the key to the city, man, because it warms my heart when communities will put together a legitimate permanent venue to have live entertainment for the community. And every community I've ever seen do that is better off for it. Russellville did it. Clarksville did it. So many places that I've played have done that, and it's a sense of community that it brings together, because there are people that you don't necessarily see all the time that maybe all of you will end up. It's like this. There's this one thing that we know for sure is that during the summer, the city's going to put on these great free concerts for people to come out and just enjoy the music, enjoy the local vendors. They get a chance to come out there and show what they've got. And so it's a chance to support. And the fact that it's right downtown is perfect, because you can go support the local businesses around there before and after the show too.
Right.
It's in a perfect location. And the one thing that I was amazed by too was whoever did the lighting knew exactly what they were doing, because there's 2 different routes you can go. You can either go the kind of the typical regular clear lighting, or you can go for full-on stage lighting, multicolored and all that stuff. If you do that, usually you're going to spend way more money than you planned on, because that gets really, really deep to go into that. But to do the clear lighting, whoever put those in picked the most perfect ones they could, because it's lit up perfectly. If anybody's wanting to take pictures or something, the lighting's perfect. and it's not the least bit cumbersome. I could see everything that I was doing up there. I'm getting really geeky now, but
that was
I tell you,
Dustin Garrett.
there you go. Good job, Dustin. But it was well built, big stage, and the way that it faces out too. I love, especially the kind of more closed back stages like that, because the way that it pushes out is a little more natural, and it helps the PA too.
Right.
Because you're not relying solely on the PA. You've got a little something behind you that's gonna almost like what a band shell would be, so to speak. But yeah, and it's a perfect location for it, and the people were great to play for last year. I hope everybody who was able to make it out last year can make it out this time around, and bring your friends. And we'll see. Last year it rained a little bit that afternoon, and we were a little worried about that, and it ended up being a beautiful evening. So
yeah, it was perfect. It was nice and cool.
I haven't dared to look at the forecast this time around, but I think hopefully we're going to be in pretty good shape, man. I'm looking forward to it. It's a great town. Honest to God, I'm not just saying this. I've been looking forward to coming back here ever since we booked it.
Awesome. Well, we're really happy to have you.
I'm happy to do it. And if you ever want to come back and do the other hour and a half of
yeah. Hey, we'll do it. We'll do it, man. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Brian, thanks, brother. I really appreciate you.